Children are genuinely struggling, really understanding who they are. A loss of identity, trying to figure themselves out in this crazy world, it is killing them.
So what are some common mistakes that parents are making?
Not giving our kids the time and
Attention.
attention that they need, that they deserve. But I get to sit with parents, and there has not been a parent who hasn't admitted to me that they regret giving their kid a phone.
How do we get that identity back for our kids?
We need to try and start raising a generation of a leader. Young people who set the standard.
I love it.
Do we want our kids to be followers at the end of the day? This is not the kind of kids we want for the future.
Yeah.
These are not the leaders of the future.
What do you feel like children are missing right now in their lives?
The two things I would say is purpose and
What are kids saying about what their purpose is?
they genuinely
They
don't
don't
know
know.
that they are looking for that purpose through social media. That they're actually looking for
Right.
spirituality and purpose and identity through social
That's scary.
media. It is extremely scary.
So, if you're a parent, educator, or simply someone who cares about the next generation, this is a conversation you won't want to miss. Today's guest shares practical insights on raising resilient children, building stronger families, and helping young people develop confidence and discipline through faith. Drawing on more than 20 years' experience in education, youth ministry, health, and martial arts, he offers real-world advice for parents who want to raise strong and capable children. Whether you're concerned about your child's future and searching for practical strategies to help young people thrive, you'll take something valuable away from this conversation. So please join me in welcoming Milad Khalil.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here.
I'm really happy to be here.
Great. Well, look, I first want to get into tell our audience a little bit about your background and your experience with working with families and young people.
Sure. It's been an interesting journey. And if you were to ask me way back, if I would have ended up doing what I'm doing today, I would have laughed at you. But, thanks be to God, I'm doing what I'm doing today. So essentially, the way it started was I left school. And at the time, I was actually training and competing as an athlete. I was a taekwondo competitor.
Nice.
So I moved straight into the sports science side of things,
Okay.
studied personal training, and then went into also learning holistic health and integrative movement.
Nice.
So I did all that initially, but then essentially shifted into teaching. I've always had a love of teaching. In year 11, I'd find myself making notes for my friends and trying to help them sort of with their study and that sort of thing. So I ended up in PE teaching. And then I was teaching PE for a while, and then slowly sort of started not getting over it, but sort of started to find more of a passion in other areas. So I taught a little bit of maths, a little bit of science, but I actually ended up shifting into becoming completely a religion teacher. So I moved into teaching religion. And one of the main reasons why I went down that path was because I felt like I wanted to offer young people more. I wanted them to discover themselves more, to understand that, there's so much more to life than what you see around you.
Yeah.
And just,
So a holistic look of life, not just necessarily education.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Health, mind, body, spirit.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. And, we as people, there are many dimensions to us as a
Yeah.
person. We've got the mental, the social, the spiritual, the emotional, etc. So really helping them discover them as a whole person.
Yeah, beautiful. And so tell me, you've been in, working with youth for so long.
Yes.
What do you find different compared to how it was 20 years ago as opposed to now?
It's changed quite significantly.
Yeah.
So I've seen a shift in many different ways.
Yeah.
So look, the family dynamic has really changed.
Yeah.
And I know families are very complex things. That's why I love your initiative, because
Yeah.
I think we need to support families as much as we can.
For sure.
But a couple of things that I've noticed sort of along the lines have been, because family dynamics have changed, it's really impacting on young people. So you've got mum and dad working, for example.
Yeah.
Everyone's doing their best trying to make ends meet. But I feel like young people are sort of falling between the cracks in the process.
That's a really interesting concept. So when you say family dynamic, what are we looking at here now?
So families are so much busier than what they used to be, in my opinion.
What's the reason for that?
Look, I think just social pressures. I think even financial pressures and people just trying to make ends meet. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of pressure on families now.
Yeah.
And everyone's doing their best. But I think things along the lines of, what is filling the time of the young people? So how are they filling their time essentially? So what would have been simpler things have now become quite complex things. So, things along the lines of technology and how much time they're spending on certain things because, mum and dad are just so busy, or they might be coming home late from work. And it's just that rat race that we're all caught up in. I really do feel as though the rat race is impacting on the lives of young people.
Yeah. Look, you talk about family dynamic. I want to get some of your experience as a father yourself and watching family. How important is it for a role of a father figure in a child's life?
It's extremely important.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the father's presence, and when I mean presence, really giving his kids that 100% attention that they need and they deserve. I am seeing a lot of that sort of start to dwindle off. So again, parents are just flat out. Dads in particular are flat out.
And burnt out.
Well, burnt out, absolutely.
Physically, emotionally,
so
coming
trying
home.
to be dad, trying to be the breadwinner, trying to do all these sorts of things, and also have a life for himself as well, a bit of a social life and that sort of thing, which is really important for his own mental health. But I think what I've noticed is that kids, teenagers are really craving their parents' attention. And unfortunately, we're finding that they're filling that with other things, particularly technology.
Yeah.
So in terms of the role of the dad, as much as dads can be involved in their lives of the children, that's totally necessary.
Yeah.
And however they need to do that. And for me, so as an example, something I do with my own kids.
Yeah.
My kids are quite young, from 12 down to 7.
Yeah.
But something I started doing more recently was actually giving them one-on-one attention time, even if it's once every couple of weeks.
Yeah.
We call it daddy time, whatever you want to call it. But taking them out, even if it's for half an hour, just giving them that 100% attention, hearing them out. How are you actually going? What's happening at school? How are things with your friends? So just giving them that one-on-one attention.
Yeah.
Because, when you've got, especially when you have multiple children, you want to give them your attention as a group.
Yeah.
But the one-on-one is priceless.
very
and
different.
it's an absolute game changer.
Yeah. So I think that's really important. Being a mum of 4, having, all that attention and being able to divide that. My husband and I sit down at the dinner table and everyone wants to talk all at once. But yeah, I find, when I'm driving my kids to activities and my little ones will say, Mum, can we come and take such and such to boxing or whatever he's doing? And I'm like, you know what? Stay home with Dad. I'm going to go with my son. I want to talk to him in the car by himself. Like that, even if it's just half an hour, have a chat, and they might share something with you that, they won't necessarily want to say that in front of their siblings.
Exactly.
So they're key important things. Yeah,
I really
absolutely.
think we should not underestimate that one-on-one time and the impact it has on them.
Yeah.
It's crucial.
Yeah, for sure. Tell me from your experience and what you see with your youth, what are some common mistakes that parents are making unknowingly?
Yeah. And as I said, we're all trying our best. We all love our kids more than anything, but things get hard. Things get full on. Where some mistakes, I would say that would definitely be the first one. I think not giving our kids the time and attention that they need, that they deserve. I think something that we need to be very mindful of is how our own individual actions around the kids impact on who they are, who they're becoming.
Yeah. Are you talking about modeling that good behavior?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, I could tell you as a teacher, for example, when we sit down for parent-teacher interviews and, if a kid might be playing up, for particular reasons and you think, okay, interesting. And then you meet the parents, the old saying, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
Oh my God, I say that all the time to my kids and my husband.
But it's so true, right?
Yeah.
Because how do kids know who to become?
For sure.
Away from the modeling, the example, right?
Yeah.
So I think sometimes we need to be very conscious of who we are in front of them, how we're behaving in front of them, the way we speak, the way we act, because highly likely they're going to take that on. And I've seen it in my own kids too.
It's an interesting point, and it's a generational thing,
Absolutely.
That father would then say, well, my father used to speak to me like this and I turned out okay. Well, in actual fact, let's take a reality check here and say, are you okay? Is that right modeling behavior?
100%.
You can break that generational cycle, and it's okay to accept, all right, maybe I could have done something a little bit differently here. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe if I can add one more, if you don't
Yeah,
mind.
absolutely.
I think sometimes we feel as though our kids need to have what all the other kids have or need to do what all the other kids do. So, for example, you have families who go on lavish holidays and
Yeah.
then kids, by default, they compare, right? Or they may need, the fancier things or the flashier things. Even though they may seem as though they want those things, it's not necessarily the case.
Yeah.
It goes back to the simple things, that time, that attention, to feel that love coming from mum and dad.
Yeah.
And sometimes doing simple things actually pays off more
I agree.
than going above and beyond thinking that these are the things that they actually want.
Yeah, definitely. And where do you think people get that idea from or children, I should say, where do you think children get that idea from, whether they need those lavish lifestyle? Is it social media?
That's definitely definitely a
Yeah,
big part of it.
yeah.
Social media, but kids talk in the yard. They talk about what they're doing. They compare, like I said before, they automatically compare themselves to others.
Yeah.
I think the comparison thing is coming from social media as well. I like to say that there's an epidemic of comparison now,
Yeah.
purely due to the fact of how these social media platforms work and everybody trying to be like so and so. And the standard thing where people are showing the best of themselves and not showing
The worst,
the
yeah.
real side of their
For
lives,
sure.
and they compare and they think that this is the way things should be, and so there's always that expectation to want to meet that or the need to meet that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Manosphere, I don't know if you know much about that or if you've watched any of those documentaries online. They talk about boys and their expectations to live up to that lavish lifestyle of having the cars, having the women, having all the money.
Yep.
And having teenage boys myself and a lot of nephews, and I look at kind of their mindset and their mentality. It is very different to how my husband was raised. Everything was much more simpler back then.
Absolutely.
The boys are chasing money. They're chasing quick money. Where do you think that will lead our youth by having to want everything now?
Yeah, we call it the instant generation,
Yeah,
right?
instant generation, yeah.
Without the good old-fashioned work
Work hard, yeah.
go through the trials, tribulations of trying to get there. Look, this is where the whole social media conversation is extremely important. I don't think we're talking enough about it as a society. I mean, it is out there, absolutely, and experts are screaming at the top of their
They
lungs.
are.
But within our own communities, within our own families, I don't think we're talking about it enough. I think we are seriously underestimating the impact that these influencers and these platforms are having on our young people. And I didn't mention at the beginning, but a lot of my work has been in youth ministry. So I've spent a lot of time with youth, hearing them out, getting a sense of where they're at, and it is killing them. It is killing them.
Tell me about what they're saying exactly to you.
So they're feeling pressure. They're feeling a bit lost, a loss of identity, trying to figure themselves out in this crazy world. I think I read a really good book actually called Limitless by a guy named Jim Quick. And he talks about, these D's that he considers when it comes to social media. So digital deluge is the first one that he talks about. What is digital deluge? It's an overload of information that kids are receiving on a daily basis, right? And I heard a stat recently that in our day and age, we're receiving more information in a day or a few days than people would have received in their lifetime.
Wow. Yeah.
So we are really underestimating.
And I wonder how much of that is so conflicting and confusing.
Confusing, absolutely.
Yeah.
Not in line with who we truly are,
True,
our
yeah.
beliefs, our values, etc.
Yeah.
So it is confusing young people. It is really confusing them. And this becomes, the standard for them. This becomes this is what I need to aspire to. This is the norm because I'm seeing it every day all around me. And it's not the norm. It's not a realistic version of who we are as a person and this world that we're living in. So that's it's
exceptional.
Huge. It's huge.
Yeah, look, talking about that delusion and where an identity, how do we get that identity back for our kids and in this modern technology age, and how are we going to be able to combat this for the future as we go on?
this is where we need to come together as communities. And even though it's going to be hard, we need to, as parents, rally together and do what's best for our kids. And I have a lot to say on the social media topic, only because I'm seeing it on a daily basis. I'm seeing the impact. Another part of my role at the moment is to mentor high school students and primary students, actually. But I get to sit with parents. And there has not been a parent who hasn't admitted to me that they regret giving their kid a phone. And obviously it's a different case per family. Some are older, some are younger. But almost every parent has said to me, I regret it. And they're seeing the impact. But they're feeling the pressure because everyone else has it. So I honestly believe until we come together as families, as communities, and really put our foot down and say, this is killing our kids and we need to set a new norm, I can't see things changing. To be honest.
I'm interested to know, so your work was mostly in the Catholic school system.
Correct.
I know that public schools have banned phones from, well, some public schools. I'm not sure exactly how many, but I know that some have banned them within the classroom space. What's your take on that?
Look, I don't think a child should have a phone on them at all during the school day. One of the reasons why I say that is because if there is any time in the day where they don't need it, it's while they're at school. So the other D, so I said digital deluge. Right? The other D is digital distraction, right? And as long as it's there, they know that they can pick it up, or that's that temptation to want to pick it up at some point and check. And this is the addictive nature. Okay. So when it comes to teenagers, I've spent a lot of time trying to understand the teenage brain. Right? Obviously, working with teenagers, you need to understand cognitively how they function.
Can you tell me exactly how to do it?
Well, I mean, it's pretty simple. I mean, not how to do it. It's that's the golden
how to
question,
understand
right?
them.
But in terms of just how we have to remind ourselves that the teenage brain is not a normal brain. And I don't mean that in a negative way. As in, it is a brain that is developing, right? So the frontal lobe, the prefrontal cortex, isn't fully developed. It's in the process of developing. And doesn't really fully develop until what, 24, 25-ish, right?
Early 20s,
So their ability to make the right decisions, their ability to try and navigate their way through these platforms and use these platforms, their emotions are hypersensitive at that point, and the potential for addictions is a lot higher, right? So we need to understand the science of what's happening in a teenage brain. Because that will inform the decisions that we make around what we are allowing them to do, right? So it's addictive for us. As an adult, it's addictive. Our parents themselves, going back to what we were saying, modeling to our children, if we have our phones in our hands 24/7, what are we expecting of them?
Of course.
And their brains can't handle it as well as ours can.
Of course,
right? Even though they might beg to differ,
Yeah.
right? Because at that age, they think they know everything and they're always
course,
right.
yeah.
But again, this is part of where they are in terms of their developmental stage. And we need to be very conscious of that. And there needs to be more education.
Yeah. What role do you think schools are playing to assist with that discipline and the emotional intelligence?
Yeah, so I think schools are trying, but I would honestly say they're not trying hard enough.
Yeah.
Okay. There are some schools who are doing it better than others. I mean, I know in the Catholic system, for example, the blanket rule is you can't have a phone on you. But then we know kids have phones on them. It's on silent, it's in their pocket or it's in their bag, right? You have some kids who comply and leave it in their locker and switch it off. But the reality is I don't think the rules around this are strict enough. I know it's hard to police. I get the logistics around it and handing your phone at the front. But to be brutally honest, Natalie, I think what we need to do is we need to go back to, well, where is this actually coming from? Why are families giving their children phones in the first place at such a young age?
Tell me, what is the age that you're seeing?
Generally,
Yeah.
I think what I'm seeing is around year 5, year 6 is when they're starting to get their phones. It used to be a lot older, but it's definitely dropping as the years go on. So, yeah, look, it's very scary.
It's interesting. I wonder if I always talk about going back to the old days when in the 90s and how our kids just went to school and we didn't worry where they were. We knew they were going to come home at 3:00 or we would pick them up from school. And I think the argument a lot of parents would have is I need to contact my child at school. I need to know where they are. I've got their location or their tracker on. What would you say to parents that have that argument or?
Very common argument.
Yeah.
And what I would say is absolutely, I understand, and the safety of our kids is our, our utmost priority. However, what kind of device are you giving your child? Right? So I know my son's going to start high school next year. There may be times where he may need to travel on his own. Am I going to give him a device? To be honest, probably not. But if I was to give him a device, it will probably be a dumb phone. It will most likely be a dumb phone.
Yeah, wow.
Something for him to be able to call me, to text me, to call his mum, to text his mum. And at most, maybe play a game of Snake, really, right?
So Nokia 5110.
Most likely. And you know what? I've almost already
Can I
warned
ask
him
you,
about that.
I'm going to challenge you here. What are his friends going to say? From a social perspective.
No,
like
100%. And I hear this all the time. And I'm hearing it from parents as well. It's the reason, again, I totally understand where parents are coming from, right? I'm kind of preparing my son for that from now.
Yeah.
I'm trying my best to educate him about the negative effects of social media use and mobile phone use. And I think what we need to do, and this is a big part of what I do in my work, we need to try and start raising a generation of leaders, okay? Young people who set the standard.
I love it.
Right?
Nice.
So do we want our kids to be followers at the end of the day? Do we really want our kids to be those people who, because they have it, I need it, and because they said this is the way it's going, I need to go in that direction? This is not the kind of kids we want for the future.
Yeah.
These are not the leaders of the future. Okay, we need to educate them. And I do get it. I know it's hard and I understand the social pressures, but we need to put them in these situations where they can stand up, where they can really, learn how to be a leader
To lead, yeah.
and give them those opportunities. So,
Definitely.
yeah, I mean, look, talk to me in a couple of years and see how it's going for me. But this is my plan, and I have seen families do it,
As well.
and it is working
Yeah.
with families.
Nice.
So a lot of the families that I work with at school and the students that I mentor, they either don't have a phone and they're perfectly fine
Yeah.
because they have those sort of leadership qualities being instilled in them.
Yeah.
Or they just carry around the dumb phone, and when they need to use it, they use
For
it.
emergency.
There are
Yeah.
other. This is the biggest thing parents need to know. There are other options,
Yeah.
and sometimes they don't get that. They don't
Yeah.
know that because everyone just has this particular
That's
device,
the
right?
standard, yeah.
But there are other options, and I think we need to take the time to explore these options.
I want to talk more about schooling system.
Yeah, please.
And so what skills are children being taught right now in school that are actually preparing them for the future?
Look, it varies from school to school. One thing I would say that is really lacking in our school systems is character development.
Okay.
So a lot of emphasis is being placed on academics, and that's all fair and understandable. Okay. But I think we need to start sort of shifting away from only focusing on that number, on that ATAR, on those results, and start looking at character development, right?
Yeah.
There's a really important word that I think is also lacking in our systems, and that word is virtue. So we hear a lot about values and we hear about character development, but essentially what we need to start talking about is this word virtue. So what is virtue? Virtue essentially is building good habits, right? It's habits that are always leading you in the right direction, that help you to make the right decision, versus vice, which is habitual bad. So it's really trying to teach our young people to get into a habit of making the right choices, making the right decisions, always being oriented towards good versus falling into a trap of habitual bad, if that makes sense, right?
Definitely.
So I think that's definitely an area that's lacking in our schools because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how good you are academically. Who are you as a person?
Yeah,
Right?
definitely.
And in your work industry, whatever industry you're going to end up in, what are people going to remember about you? It's the kind of person that you are, right? And how you approach your work at a human level rather than just at a career sort of a level and a financial sort
Academic,
of focus.
yeah, absolutely. That's interesting. I want to touch on a little bit about influence as well now, because I find that, again, we talked about social media influence, but then we have peer pressure from, the other students that are wanting to play up or do something a little bit outside of the boundary. If you could give some advice to a parent about a child who does have that virtue, is trying really hard to strive, but we have that negative influence around them from their peers. What kind of advice would you give a parent who is struggling to help their child make those right choices?
For sure. And schools are very complex places, right? I think sometimes parents don't fully understand the complex nature of schools on a day-to-day basis. But in terms of advice for parents, especially if that kid's really trying hard, and you see those students who, really focused, really doing their best, but they are in those interesting environments. I would say that's where community is extremely important, right? So how involved are we in their lives as parents? What sort of environments and community groups are we exposing our children to and placing our children in? So church groups, for example. So I think it's important that we find as many like-minded families who share the same values, who share the same beliefs, and not necessarily all the time, but at least, somewhat aligned, or as aligned as possible to who we are as a family. And then the students themselves, or the children themselves, as a teacher I always refer to them as students, but the children themselves will then start to recognize the difference.
Yeah.
So they'll start to differentiate between, okay, I see the behaviors of these people, but I also see the behaviors of these people. And, God willing, they end up figuring out which sort of, peer group they want to be connected in with.
Yeah.
So I think, and sort of to your question earlier about, where a parent's sort of sometimes falling short, I think we do need to try and take the time to make the effort to put our kids in good environments. So there are awesome church youth groups, for example, right? Or try and look for that sporting club where you do find, like-minded families, or even the school where you're trying to find like-minded families. Otherwise, we're going to be fighting this battle ongoingly, with people who differ to who we are.
Yeah, I mean, I love the church groups. They're beautiful for the youth. My son attends regularly. Sporting clubs is a big problem at the moment.
Yes.
The violence, the disrespect from parents, from coaches, and the players themselves.
And this comes back to that modeling, right?
Yeah, it's really upsetting. And my kids were playing sport, and I had to take them out. I'll be honest, I took them out both times because of that negativity I didn't want my children being involved in. And it's really upsetting in Western Sydney. What would you say about our sporting groups at the moment? Football, soccer, basketball, they're just so competitive.
It is. It's really hard. I mean, look, it is a tricky one, but if there is another option that's a little bit further away where you find the culture in that particular club is better, it's worth doing the travel.
Yeah.
I mean, if I can talk from my own experience, we send our kids to school an hour away from where we live, right?
Right.
And while that is hard, and while I understand most families probably can't do that, this is a decision that we made for the benefit of our kids.
Sure.
And even with sporting clubs, we've shopped around, and I know, my boys were in a particular touch footy comp in a particular area, and based on what I saw, they won't be there next year.
Wow.
But I think the key thing here is to actually communicate this to our children.
Yeah.
Right? They're not going to understand if you just pull them out and say, "No, I don't like it. This is a joke of a club.
Yeah.
I don't want you here." Talk to them.
Yeah.
Try and help them to understand, right? Say, look, it's probably not the best environment for us. I know you're passionate about this sport. I know this is what you want to do. But let's try and make this decision as a family for your own benefit.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Communication is so important.
Massive,
I always say
massive.
that. I talk to my kids all the time and they're like, "Stop talking to me, Mom. I don't want to hear it. Stop nagging me."
Yep.
And I say, "You know what? I'm going to nag you. I'm never going to stop. I'm going to continue nagging you
100%.
until you get married."
And you know what? They might not agree with you in the moment, and
Yeah,
they
I
might
know
put up
that.
a bit of a fight. But this is where we have to be strong as
Yeah.
parents. We know what's best for them. We have to put our foot down. And I'm pretty sure they'll thank us later for it.
Yeah, they
right?
will.
Or
And
hopefully they will.
I've grown as a mother, and I've learned now to speak more calmly rather than accusational.
Yes.
You've done this, or you can do better. I've learned to kind of be a little bit more submissive in my conversation with them so that they feel like they have the upper hand.
Absolutely. And you know what? That needs to be reciprocated as well. With the kid will start to speak to you in that manner.
They have.
And that
they already
respect
have.
is reciprocated,
I've
right?
noticed it so much, probably more so the last 3 years or so, as they become teenagers,
Yep.
As little ones, I would probably be a little bit more passionate when
Yep.
I speak to them.
Yep.
I'm using choice of words here.
Yep.
But yeah, I think, as they became teenagers, I thought, you know what, as a teenager, I never liked it when, my mum would yell at me.
That's
I'm not going
right.
to yell at
Which
him anymore.
approach actually worked at the end of
Yeah,
the
and
day,
it's that I'm shifting that generational cycle. I'm cutting it
Yep.
and talking to them like one-on-one.
What does
We're
discipline
the
look like,
same.
right?
Yeah.
It looks different at the different stages in their
Yeah,
life.
100%,
right?
absolutely.
The child needs the no,
We're
don't do that,
adapting
right?
as they grow.
But as they grow, they really should be at the age of reason.
Yes.
Right? But the modeling thing is huge, right? And to add to what you were saying, as a dad, I've noticed the reaction of dads, especially, even more so than mums, the reaction of the dad really does determine how the child responds in that situation, whether they even can cope in these sorts of environments. If dad's always erupting, and I get it, I know dad comes home, he's exhausted, the last thing he wants is a household that's quite chaotic,
yeah.
etc. But I think this is where the virtue conversation comes in. We really need to try and work on ourselves and that virtue of patience and that virtue of temperance, because our children will end up reacting this way when they're older. And
absolutely.
it's not always the only way to respond in these sorts of situations. This is, as you're saying, I've changed more recently as well in my parenting, in the way I father my children. And I'm telling you, it has worked wonders.
Yeah.
So just that approach where we talk through it, we hear them out, we know that they are being heard, that we value and we understand the place that they're in. And the response I've received from my own children tells me there's something in this. We need to really look at this approach.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we'll be naive to think that all parents have that perfect family dynamic with mum and dad at home.
Yep.
What would you recommend for a single mum who doesn't have that present father figure there?
Absolutely. And I can only imagine how hard that really is. And I do know kids also sort of look for that sort of a male example or model. I think that's probably the direction she should try and go, to try and look for good male role models in the community. Again, it might be someone in the church community. It might be a particular coach who, really models that authentic masculinity, right? And allow her children to be in environments where there are good men, good male role models. But it's not always, possible.
Yeah.
So I do get it. It is a really hard situation.
Yeah, that is definitely. But yeah, I think, like you say, having a community around you, I always like to say this, it takes a village to raise children. It really does. Village looks a little bit different now in this modern world, but we can create it for ourselves. We can build a community of like-minded people, for sure.
Absolutely.
So tell me a little bit more about your martial arts club that you've got.
Yeah.
Why do you believe that children can benefit from, that type of activity?
For sure.
Yeah.
This is something I'm very passionate about.
Yeah.
I did forget to mention at the start that, my wife and I, we do run a
Yeah.
martial arts center, and we specifically cater for children and teenagers. Again, just my work with youth. I wanted to really specialize in martial arts for kids and teens. Why is it so beneficial? Well, firstly, I know how beneficial it was for me. So I was a very shy kid, introvert. I'm still a bit of an introvert, lacked confidence. I wasn't very sporty at all. So what martial arts did for me was, because it's such a well-rounded sport and activity, it really did help me build those gross motor skills and really help me develop my athletic ability to the point where I actually ended up competing, as I said initially, and at a pretty high level. So it transformed me as a person from, lacking that confidence to, I think carrying myself well, in particular environments. One thing I think that it is offering that other sports isn't offering at the moment is that sort of character development side, right? So bringing all those good old-fashioned things in. So it's the respect element. It's the expectations around discipline. Okay, you need to stand in a particular way. You need to address your coach or your instructor in a particular way. It still has the yes sir, yes miss, yes master, whatever it is you want to call them, depending on your martial art, right? there is a high expectation. If you want to make it to the next level, you do need to satisfy this criteria. If you'd like to move on to the next belt, you do need to work hard. You do need to persevere. So it really helps in terms of goal setting, right? At a very early age, they can physically see all the different goals, all the different belt levels or whatever it is that you need to work through. So it helps with the perseverance. It helps with the goal setting. It also helps in terms of putting kids out of their comfort zone. It's not a comfortable sport. It's quite a physical sport, okay? Whether you're sparring, whether you're doing takedowns or grappling or whatever it is that you're doing, you need to be physical. It's not a comfortable environment to be in, right?
Yeah.
So it's all of these elements that you wouldn't typically get in other sports. But look, for me, I still love the sort of old-fashioned element, the traditional element, the character development, and those sorts of things there.
It sounds like an all-rounder skill setting
Correct.
type of
Correct.
sport. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I love that. Awesome.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about some changes that you've witnessed with the youth, say starting from the beginning and after 6 months or 12 months. What have you witnessed your children
With the
looking
martial
like?
arts students?
Yeah, with the students. What do they look? How do they look after that?
It's
after that period?
phenomenal. The transformation that we see, particularly when it comes to the confidence, but then also the physical ability.
Yeah.
This is why I do what I do.
about,
I love it, right? So I have had, to be honest, when it comes to martial arts academies, most of the students that come in are quite shy, are quite reserved. There may be episodes of bullying happening at school. So I would say the top 2 reasons why parents bring their kids to martial arts is confidence building and some sort of discipline and focus element, right? So to see who they are when they're a white belt to who they become as a black belt, junior black belt, whatever it is, they're a totally different kid.
Yeah.
Not to mention all of the examples and scenarios that parents come to us with around my son or my daughter was in this particular situation and I saw them stand up for themselves at a party or I saw them stand up for their friend at a party.
Brilliant.
The crazy thing is it never really is a physical encounter. It's more how they carry themselves. It's verbally how they speak because of that confidence that gets them out of these situations. And this is really what martial arts is about. So people are reluctant to put their kids in because they think it's a fight sport, okay? And it is a fight sport. And I do want to know that my students can defend themselves in a messy situation.
Sure, yep.
However, that isn't the focus.
Yep.
The focus is the character element, right? And that a lot of the time is enough to get them out of that situation, but also to give them the confidence to end up in leadership roles, right? To not be intimidated in particular situations, to stand up confidently in front of a class and deliver a speech.
Yeah.
These sorts of things are why we do what
That's
we do.
lovely.
Yeah.
How nice. Tell me a little bit about some of the challenges that you face with parents and their expectation of setting their children up to go to the next level. Because I know there is a lot of competition in regard to their expectation.
Yep.
Tell me what kind of things you face there.
Look, as not just a martial arts instructor, but also as a school teacher, it's important to recognize that every child, every student is unique in their own way and has a particular potential when it comes to either the physical or any particular goals that they need to achieve. Every kid is different. So what we need to recognize and acknowledge is, has that child really given their 100%? And are we judging them based on that rather than, because some kids are so much more athletic than others, right? So we shouldn't expect all the kids to be able to perform all the same techniques or, live up to a particular expectation. It's about trying to push them to their potential. And it's about acknowledging and recognizing, have they actually worked hard to improve? Have they actually been, taking some time in their own lives to fine tune that particular technique that they're working on, right? And we can clearly see that, right?
Yeah.
We know if they've been doing some extra practice. But not only that, have they also been applying, these tenets of martial arts in their own lives? What are they like at school? Are they mucking up at school? Are they misbehaving at school? Well, then you're not actually bringing this into everyday life, right? Are you showing the discipline? Are you showing the focus? So I think it's about, a good martial arts academy will know their students as individuals, rather than, just being a massive class and it's a numbers game,
Yeah.
which we are seeing a lot of, and parents need to be conscious of that.
Yeah.
But knowing the students as individuals and then recognizing that they have improved as an individual and they've actually given their absolute best to get to the level that they are today. But it is a tricky system to work through. But if you don't approach it at a sort of personalized individual level, you'll get some discrepancies in terms of who actually deserves to be at that particular level or not, right?
Yeah, for sure. And look, I think that also comes down to what we were saying a little bit earlier about that balance
Yes.
and time.
Yes.
And if a child really wants something, work really hard to get there. And that comes down to the roles of a parent to be able to provide them with that space to practice and to be better at what they do.
Absolutely.
Distract them off the iPad, distract them off the phone.
100%.
Let's get outside and practice our katas. Is that what they're called, katas?
Well, it's different in every martial art, but you get patterns, you get katas.
So practice that. That'll be a perfect alternative than sitting on their phone after school.
And again, this is where sort of martial arts differs from other sports, right? Because there generally is a bit of a structured curriculum that the child needs to work through.
Yeah.
So it does sort of transfer across to school.
Yeah.
And it does sort of transfer across to other sports as well.
It's interesting. I think teachers, they often say you can really tell what kind of parent and support system they have at home with their whole holistic behavior, discipline and all that. And why do you think discipline has become a little bit of a misunderstanding concept in modern parenting?
Yeah, look, I can honestly say I feel as though discipline standards have dropped.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, in the school space, they've dropped. And even in the home, I've noticed that it's dropped. Again, why? Because parents are so busy, because they're so consumed in a million things at the one time. So we sort of let things go. And, sometimes technology becomes the pacifier or, that thing that sort of keeps them at bay for that period while we get what we need to get done. So I do think standards have dropped. But again, even in society, everything seems to be dropping, right? Values, morals, it's all sort of dropping. So we need to raise our kids as leaders and show them. If we don't model it to them, if we don't give them that example of what is the standard, then they'll never know. I think we need to definitely place a lot more emphasis on what discipline looks like, and those good old fashioned structured things.
Absolutely. And tell me a little bit more about you working in the ministry. What do you feel like children are missing right now in their lives?
They are missing. I think children are genuinely struggling, more so sort of teenagers, I'd say, but actually it is starting earlier. Really understanding who they are as a
self-identity.
human person, right?
Yeah.
I think, as a Christian, I would say we need to help our children understand that they have been made in the image and likeness of God. They are a daughter of God. They are a son of God. And that is the most important thing for them to first and foremost recognize and understand, okay? That links them back to their creator,
Yeah,
right?
wow.
So I think in terms of who they are as a human person, again, because they're so confused because of all the different influences and all the different, expectations and things, that's one thing. I think they are lacking community. They do crave community. So as a youth minister, when we bring students together, when we bring children together and teens together, that's a highlight for them. They want to be in community. They're really craving community, but community with people their age who are like-minded, who are interested in the same things that they're interested in. I would say purpose. So the two things I would say is purpose and community. So identity and purpose, and then good community. As you were saying, it takes a village. So who is that village to our children?
And what do children, from your experience, and what are kids saying about what their purpose is?
They genuinely don't know. They genuinely don't. And in fact, there are studies and stats that are showing now that they are looking for that purpose through social media.
Right.
So they're actually looking for spirituality and purpose and identity through social media.
That's scary.
It is extremely scary, right? So again, this is what is, what is the place of these technology and these technologies and these platforms in the life of the child, and what impact is it really having on them?
As a society, people that aren't from the Christian faith, what type of misconceptions do you think people have about Christianity?
Oh, there are a number of misconceptions about Christianity. People feel as though Christianity is one of those sort of faith systems that sort of is oppressive in a way. There are a bunch of rules or laws that you have to follow. And if you're not following these rules or laws, you're going to hell. Okay?
Yeah.
I would say that's probably the biggest misconception.
Wow.
Okay. If you were to summarize Christianity in one word, that word would be love.
I was going to say love.
Right.
I promise I was going to say love.
There you go, right?
Yeah.
And what is love? At the end of the day, what's a powerful definition of the word love? To love is to always will the good of the other. Okay? I haven't said anything about God. I haven't said anything about religion. To love, regardless of who it is to always will the good of the other, right? So if we sort of focus in more on the positives and what our faith offers in terms of, understanding what it means to love your neighbor. And we can't do that without God. We need God's grace to understand these things. We need prayer in our life, and that brings grace. So I would say we need to shift the conversation away from the negatives and focus on love. The other word I would use, which people would think is the total opposite, is freedom, right? So if we look at, for example, God's commandments, just as an example, what are these commandments actually telling us? They're not oppressive.
No, not at all.
They are not actually a bunch of laws to make our lives miserable and boring. They are actually a guide to set us free, right? Why do I say that? The way I teach my students, right, and in all the youth ministry talks I've given, I've spoken to thousands of students, and you always hear a pin drop when I say things like this, right? Let's take one of the commandments, thou shalt not steal. Okay, you can say, don't tell me what to do. Okay, don't tell me whether I should take something or not. Okay, what if I really need that one thing? How about we change the wording of that? Rather than saying thou shalt not steal, what if we said to people, it's really important to respect and to appreciate other people's property? There would be no one that would disagree with that, right? As an example. Let's use another one. Let's say thou shalt not bear false witness. Don't tell me there are going to be instances where I might need to tell a white lie or whatever it is, right? What if we change the wording? What if we said, how would you feel if the people around you were never honest with you? They were actually lying to you. How would that make you feel as a person? Which kind of person would you appreciate more? The one who is honest, and there's that integrity there, and that value and that dignity and all of that is there, versus the one who just tells the lie because it's the easy way out, right? If you reframe the way the faith is taught to young people, it changes their response totally, right? And, back in the days, it probably wasn't taught very well, but things are changing, right? Because of the work of these incredible theologians out there and, church leaders and people along those lines. There is a way to present the faith to young people that is appealing, that is reasonable and logical. And when you present it to them in this way, I'm telling you, they eat it up. They want to hear this because then the purpose comes back. Then the identity comes back. Then the understanding of who am I as a human person in this crazy world comes back.
So fascinating.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Reframing that language, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And making it more appealing and relevant to what everyday situations may be. I find that so captivating. And I think, the youth will get a lot out of your teachings. So right now, are you still currently teaching in schools?
So I work in a system of schools at the moment, but I work with schools.
Okay.
So there are some programs I run with students and with teachers. So this is the kind of work I do now. So yeah.
And do you have a team below you where you're, using those practical examples so that they learn and so that they can continue teaching on throughout the school system?
Yeah, absolutely.
As well?
So in my previous two roles, so I worked in a system called Sydney Catholic Schools, where in that role I looked after youth ministry, and we did a bit of family evangelization, but also adult faith formation. And there we had a team who would go into schools and run programs where we share this version, well, not version, it's not the right word, but this way of approaching the faith in a way that youth can connect with and can relate to. So that was happening. And then in my role before this role in the Archdiocese, we also had the same sort of thing. So we would go into schools, a couple of days in the week, and we would go into classrooms, and it'd be really casual, informal sessions, right? So it might be at a lunchtime, right? Bring your lunch. We might bring a box of donuts.
Nice.
Let's just hang out, have a chat, and let's talk about these things that you're probably not hearing this sort of thing on social media.
Definitely.
So let's look at the other perspective.
Yeah, and what's the response like with the students? How do they react to this stuff?
It's phenomenal. Like, I'm actually getting goosebumps thinking about it, right? Because as I said, they don't hear it often. When they do, they know they're hearing truth. They know they're hearing something of substance, right? And we need to do so much more of this, right?
And I think if you can just change that one child's perspective in every classroom, I think that will be enough for that to then
there is a ripple effect that we don't even see or know about sometimes, right? I've had situations where I see a student 10 years down the track, and they'll say, sir, what you said on that lesson has stuck with me till this day. And this is not my work. This is God's work, right? We are mere instruments at the end of the day, right? But this tells you how important it is and how they, how much they need to hear it.
Yeah, for sure. So from a practical perspective, what simple habits do you think, parents and children can do to improve their mental health?
Okay, mental health. Interestingly, as I mentioned earlier, I did a little bit of study around holistic health and wellness and that sort of thing. Sometimes things are quite simple. So as an example, how much time is the young person spending on their phone before bed? How much sleep are they getting, as an example? So something as simple as getting more sleep changes what your day looks like. And I can tell you, being in the classroom, how many heads are nodding off, right? As we're talking, they're lacking sleep, okay? So movement is huge, right? So again, it's, we're seeing, alarming rates of mental illness among young people, right? And do we default straight to medication, or are we looking at what impact does exercise and movement have on the body, right? These are endorphins that are being released when these people are moving, right? So that's important. Food and nutrition, of course. But apart from that, it's silence, right?
Okay.
The silence, if you speak to young people, right, the silence has become deafening, okay? Do they have time, even as adults, right? Let's just look as a family. How much time as a family do we have to spend time doing simple things, right? Something that it's weird you asked, because recently my family and I, we've all of a sudden become obsessed with sunrise and sunsets.
Oh, nice.
Right?
Yeah.
Don't ask me where, actually my wife was the one.
It's like a meditation feel.
But to be in awe and wonder of what we're seeing, right? That the fact that the sun rises every day reminds us what? That every day is a brand new day. Yesterday's history, right? So how do we approach this day? But are we giving our young people opportunities to experience these things, right? Are we taking them on a bushwalk or a hike to see the incredible waterfalls, or to to just get that fresh air and get that oxygen into the system? Time to stop, to pause, to be in silence, to be in nature, just to listen to the water, or, feel the warmth of the sun. We've really disconnected ourselves from the world.
Yeah. That's so fascinating, particularly before when you talked about the Ds and you said the distraction.
Yes, digital distraction. But with that comes digital depression.
Okay, because right? we haven't got to number 4 yet. Alex, tell me.
I actually can't remember number 4. So.
Oh, no.
So digital deluge was definitely one. Digital distraction was the other. Digital depression. Right? If I remember the other day, I'll let you know.
We'll go on to that. I think so. Distraction. So, the silence part. I love
Yes.
that because as a practical example in my life as well, my family love to have the TV blasting and, everyone's talking over top of each other, and we go on regular long trips to a property for us and I said, let's just turn all the phones off and look outside the window.
100%.
Look at the cows. Look at the sheep.
100%.
Have a look at the landscape in front of you. Just look outside the window. It's a common thing. My kids hate it. I say to them, look outside the window. And they're like, why? Just look outside the window.
It's the same thing on our car rides.
I love to meditate. I love to just sit
does.
there in silence and stare blankly because it's just so important. You go ahead.
No, I'm so passionate about this, right? But think about what we did.
Yeah. We didn't have that.
We didn't have
No
it,
way.
right?
Yeah.
But again, let's go to the science. What is this actually doing for us in terms of our mental health?
Yes.
What is this doing
does
for
it do?
our brains, right? So our brain needs time to digest what we're hearing, what we're seeing, to reflect, to pause, to actually think, right? Think about the situation where we're even taking our phones into the toilet with us, right? Okay.
Yes.
If we're in the supermarket, we're waiting in the shopping line, observe how many people take out that phone. We do not have time to stop and pause and allow our brain to think for itself and digest, right? Everything that's been happening and process, right? But this is where amazing ideas come to mind. If we're always filling our minds with information, when are we giving our incredible minds this, supercomputer to think creatively? We have to. I could go on a tangent about this.
No, please
right?
do. Because I have the same mindset as well. And I've said to my kids, just get off the device, because then you'll be able to come up with a creative business idea when you're older.
Exactly.
You know what? This is how I came up with the Thriving Family Project.
Yeah, right.
Because it was like, I just sick and tired of seeing all this bad influence online, and it's like, zone out. What can I do to change?
Listen to the creator of Snapchat.
Yeah.
Right? The creator of Snapchat, the founder of Snapchat, did not have technology in his home.
Yeah. Okay? And I heard a lot of the big tech CEOs don't. They don't allow it in there.
That's
Mark
exactly
Zuckerberg
right.
apparently doesn't even have technology for his kids.
That's right. And
why?
Steve Jobs didn't want his children using iPads and these sorts of things.
Yes.
But you know why? Because they know the science.
Yes.
They've learnt the science. They know how their technology works, and they know the negative impacts, right? So I really think we need to wake up and, let's create those opportunities for silence, for nothingness. Let's allow our children to be bored, because the boredom is where the creativity comes.
Yes.
Right?
From a holistic perspective, we talked about a lot about, the whole thing, mental health, emotional health, spiritual health. What does a successful Australian family look like to you?
Oh, my goodness. I don't know. Is there a successful Australian family?
Yeah,
I think we do need to recognize that every family is a different and beautiful and unique household. And every family has its own struggles and its own challenges. And I think it's important as parents and as families to actually know that and to hear other people's stories, right? Because one of my favorite sayings is there's always a story behind the eyes. Right? We never know what's happening in people's households. But I mean, I can only talk from myself in terms of what we are trying to do as parents. Quality time, I've given a talk to dads on this, and I said, how do you spell love? You spell love with Time, right? I think quality time is something that's seriously lacking. So I would definitely encourage families to spend more time together, real quality time, really be present with your children and be present with your spouse, right? So another example is how much time are husbands and wives dedicating to each other. Do you have the monthly date night, as an example, to sit and actually talk without the noise, without the kids in your ear?
And you know what? That model's really good parenting dynamic too for your kids, because they can say, okay, mum and dad are having their time.
Absolutely.
I want to do that when I get married. My husband and I are very much into that. We always make sure the kids understand. It's really important. And you know what? We've been criticized about that.
Yeah, and
we
that's really wrong. That is wrong on many levels. And so parents, at the end of the day, you can't give what you don't have, right? So if parents aren't showing that love and that care and that appreciation for each other, the kids are going to see it, right? Again, it comes back to the modeling and the example. But then what are their future marriages going to look like if, you know, they're seeing instability, they're seeing tension. And I get it. It's hard. Everyone's fighting their own battles, right? But I think wherever possible, quality time with the kids and quality time with each other. That's one thing I would say. What would be another thing? Please try your best as parents to be involved in what your children are doing. So going back to the martial arts or the sporting example, are you genuinely interested in what your child is doing,
Learning.
right? Or are you on your phone when your child's at training or in class or what they're doing? And you know what's interesting? I notice the difference in the students when the parent is genuinely interested and involved, even if it's not a sport, you know, to your liking.
Yeah.
But if they're talking to their kid about how was class, what did you learn today? You know, I noticed that you did this that you couldn't do before. Oh, what that does for a kid is phenomenal, right?
Yeah, wow.
But the parents that are involved, I see their kids excelling faster.
Yeah.
And progressing, you know, in what they're doing. So genuinely be interested. Recognize that your children are all extremely unique and different.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, sometimes we fall into the trap of trying to live our dream through our kids in a particular sport or whatever.
Yeah, we've seen that
That
too.
is very dangerous.
Yeah.
Because they are not you, right? And they will never be you. And they shouldn't be you,
No.
right? Because
Yeah.
they are their own unique, unrepeatable person, right? So, find out what they like. None of I competed in martial arts. I competed as an athlete in Taekwondo. None of my kids are competing as much as I would love them to. And sometimes I put it out there, Gabby, do you want to jump into a tournament? No, Jerome's a touch footy player. Dominic's a soccer player. Gabby's a gymnast, and Jacinta's a dancer.
Wow.
Right?
Oh, you got 4 kids too.
I do have 4 kids.
Beautiful.
Yeah, right. And am I present? Am I involved?
Yep.
Am I, showing how proud I am of them? And you just see them light up, right?
Nice.
And Gabby's got a gymnastics competition this weekend, so I can't wait for
good
that.
luck, good luck.
Yeah, but it's it's about talking to them in the lead up, right?
Yeah.
And we're not coach, we're mum and dad. Let the coaches do the coaching.
Oh, absolutely.
Let
That's
the
very
coaches do the
important
coaching,
too. Yeah.
And let mum and dad be the support, right?
For sure.
So yeah, being involved. Just really trying to find families. We need the community side of things. We need the village side of things. If the children have grandparents, if their grandparents are still around, please make sure they're around their grandparents. Something that really annoys me these days is we see elderly as elderly and not as the elders. They have so much wisdom.
So much.
And so much experience to share with their grandchildren. So try and keep them as connected as you can, of course. Honestly, in a nutshell, go back to basics.
Yeah.
We need to go backwards in order to go forwards.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. And so what gives you hope for the next generation?
Look, again, I think if I'm starting to see sort of people become more in tune with the direction that we need to go. Like I said, there are so many experts out there who are screaming at the top of their lungs on, we need to pull back on the technology. You've got the whole AI conversation now where experts around the world. I mean, you have, the recently appointed Pope Leo as an example, right?
Yeah.
This is the head of the Catholic Church who decided for his first encyclical, and an encyclical is a letter to the people of the world, right? His first encyclical is on this whole topic of AI.
Yeah.
So the Pope himself is recognizing these issues.
Evolving.
So I think we're starting to see the world wake up to all of these things that are damaging our young people, and let's really start to focus our attention towards these things. So let's try and reorient our focus and our perspective towards what's really important, what's really human. Let's go back to what it means to be human, and I do think things will really start to improve for our young people from there.
I agree. I really do. Well, thank you so much for your insight and your experience and knowledge and chatting with me about this. I really, truly hope that, we can continue to have this conversation about building thriving families. So thank you so much for coming in, and I'd love to have you back again.
It'd be awesome. Can't wait.
Awesome. Thank you so much,
Sounds
Milad.
good. Thank you.
Awesome.